How we doing, folks? My guest today is going to be Park Smalley. Park is one of the true legends in the sport of freestyle skiing and a real pioneer in help promoting and growing the sport. He started out in the hot dog days as a competitor and even traveled around the world with the Marlboro Ski Show promoting the sport of freestyle skiing, traveling all over to places in Europe and even places like Iran. In 1976, he moved to Steamboat Springs, Colorado with some friends and started the Great Western Freestyle Camp. He turned to coaching and was the first US Freestyle Ski Team coach in 1983, where his athletes won an astonishing 7 Nations Cups, 114 World Cup wins, and 332 podiums. Throughout his 25 years of coaching, Park was extremely influential and coached more than 3,000 athletes, legends of the sport, Steve Desovich, Ann Battelle, Donna Weinbrack, Nelson Carmichael, Fuzz Feddersen. I mean, a lot of names that you can think of. Johnny Mosley have all been coached or have been to one of Park's Great Western Freestyle camps. Park was also super influential in helping to get freestyle skiing into the Olympics in 1988 as an exhibition sport first, and was really influential in its continued growth and progression. After Park retired from coaching, he turned to commentating and commentated for a bunch of different networks and CBS during the Olympics in 1992, 94, and 98. I remember listening to Park as a young kid and really spurred my interest into freestyle, especially the commentary for that 1998 gold medal winning run by Johnny Mosley. Had me on the edge of the couch running up and down, waving American flags, and it's really awesome. And it's fun to have Park and really hear that voice in my head as we were talking back and forth. It's really, really awesome. And then Steamboat in 1999 named the Park Smalley Freestyle Complex, where they host a bunch of World Cups on the front of the mountain there. So he had that honor. And then 2003, he was the first freestyle skier to be nominated to the Colorado Snow Sports Hall of Fame. And recently, in 2024, he was just announced as a new member of the US Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. Long overdue, in my opinion. We had a great time getting to come on and talk, and I really appreciate Park taking the time out to tell me some of the tales of starting out in freestyle and the growth of the sport and some of those trials and tribulations, the insurance battles with the mountains, and really a bunch of crazy stuff I had to go through. And it was really, really nice to get to have this conversation. I really hope you folks enjoy it. Thanks. Okay, perfect. Now we're rolling. Now the real stuff happens. Park, thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate you coming on to talk with such a legend. It's really an honor for me.
Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so getting to it, and one of the biggest things, being able to have you on and really for me is to really learn a little bit more and get an introduction from the father of freestyle. I mean, you spent so much time in this sport and are really so influential to so many people. I was actually joking with my wife before you were coming on the show. I was like, I really have Park to thank for like our lives and where we are, because I don't know if freestyle kind of would be where it is today without you and all your help and perseverance in making this sport an Olympic sport and continue to make it safe for athletes, and dealing with insurance battles with mountains and just being able to kind of keep this sport going. So I really do appreciate it.
Battle was an understatement back in the day, that's for sure, because it was they didn't want us around. We spent a lot of time up north in Canada. They spent a lot of time in Europe because at some point, I believe it was like 80, 81, we weren't allowed to do any somersaults in the States on snow. And so we had to do a lot of behind the scenes type of thing. We would do it right. But I spent a lot of time in Europe and in Canada just getting my athletes to an area where they could train, so we could be somewhat prepared for the upcoming season.
Gotcha. So how did you get, where are you originally from, and how did you get the start into kind of freestyle and somersaults and the exhibition of the hot dog freestyle?
Yeah, certainly hot dog was what we called it back in those days. Freestyle wasn't even there yet. But I grew up in, I say grew up until I was 15, 16 in Southern California.
Okay.
So basically spent, I wasn't a big surfer or anything. I did all the other sports, football, basketball, baseball. And I wasn't a very big guy, so it was not something that I was going to be pursuing. And my dad was from Washington State, and he literally came home one weekend. I was going into my junior year in high school and said, I think we're going to have to move to Washington because your grandmother's not doing well. And I said, what, like what, in the summer? He said, no, like this weekend. Yeah. And you could imagine me, a teenager at that age, and getting into high school and all the stuff going on. I was a rebel for the first year. We moved to Spokane, Washington in
Okay.
1968. And I was a big baby. I pouted and wasn't going to do anything that he said, that's no problem. You can just shovel snow. That's what you want to do. So 68 was one of the biggest winters still to date that they've ever had. And I'll never forget when I started shoveling snow and it was over my head. I said, well, maybe I should try the skiing thing. And literally, some of my buddies at school drugged me up there and they had night skiing. So we'd go after school. And I got, not 2 or 3 months into it and I was hooked. I couldn't get enough. And so I skied probably in those first 2 years because I started going down under to South American skiing. I started doing wherever there was snow, I would go. And
Wow.
probably more in the first 2 years than a lot of people did in a lifetime at that time. But my second year of skiing, I became a ski instructor, and that was my senior year in high school. And all I heard about was Snowboard and Alta, and actually Snowboard wasn't even open then, so it was Alta that I wanted to go and ski. So we a bunch of us got together, 3 guys, myself, and we jumped in my car and headed to Utah, and we skied taught skiing at Solitude and skied every day at Alta. And then we skied a high traverse at Alta over Snowboard, which was open, and we just cruised some of those bowls, man, all by ourselves with snow that was up to our neck. Sometimes it was absolutely
Wow.
crazy. So that was kind of the way I got going into skiing, and it happened fast. But I couldn't get enough of it. Couldn't get enough, and I was in Alta in 1970. Well, I was there 71, 72, and I spent a winter in Sun Valley. But in 71, I believe, I caught wind of this hot dog thing going on. There's a few of us out there that were busy doing somersaults or trying somersaults if you were, because there was no any way to really kind of have any instruction. In fact, the first instruction I ever got, we went over to Snowboard because, again, back in the day, we were having a difficult time doing it on the slope. And we hiked up with some shovels and built a bump. And the good news was there was about 3 feet of snow that day. But one of the guys that I was with said, it's super easy, man. Just come in as fast as you can. You hit the top of the jump, throw everything backwards, and you'll get around for sure. And I did, man, 2.5 times. It was like a Help Me Mr. Wizard cartoon from the days of past. But thank goodness it was 3 feet of powder. I survived it. But again, that rush of doing it and feeling it and the adrenaline buzz was got me started. So from there, freestyle was just getting going. The first event was in Waterville Valley, New Hampshire, and that same year they ended up with one in Sun Valley, and it's close enough to me that I traveled over there and did an event there. Pretty much, aerials was my best event, but at those days, as you know, we did all 3. And in fact, in the beginning, we did all 3 in one run. So you speed a bump run, did a little bit of ballet, and then you hit the jump at the bottom and
Really?
scored all 3. Yeah. And you can imagine, guys, by the time they got to the jump, a lot of them were sucking gas, man, because you just skied a bump run, you just did some ballet events. And at that point, we were doing, I think we were on 185s maybe. So ballet wasn't all that easy on 185s. And you talk about guys coming in just kind of falling asleep on that jump, and just everything goes every which way and full on yard sales at the bottom of the run. But again, it was there was 10,000 people there watching the bump event. It was just absolutely crazy. And you can imagine at that time it was 10,000 wild and crazy partying people at the same time. So I guess I tell you at that time, 72, I got hooked, and I started zipping around, and I went home, and my parents were big in me going to school. And I said I was going to go to Spokane Falls Community College. In fact, I did. And I ended up there for about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and I just couldn't get skiing out of my head. So I went home and I sat him down and we chatted a little bit. And I said, listen, this skiing thing has just taken off for me. I'd like to give it a try, see what I can do with it. And my mom said, okay, we'll give you 1 year. And after 1 year, if you're not cutting it, you come back to school. I said, fair enough. They gave me a little bit of change. I hit the road, man. And one thing led to another, and I started doing some competition. And then, just like we just got done talking about, my first full year, I was doing some ballet, and I got all crossed up and tipped over backwards and snapped my ankle.
Oh,
And so now I'm in a cast. I'm going to this event. I went to the World Championships in Snowboard, and couldn't compete, but watched all these guys doing it. And while I was there, I ran into some guys that were doing, I don't know if you're familiar with the Marlboro ski shows.
okay.
And that was a ski show that was put together by Marlboro Cigarettes, ironically enough, and traveled the world. And they asked me if I wanted to join. And I knew coming back from an injury, one, I wasn't high enough in the totem pole to get a real good, and not many people were retainers at that point. Got some equipment for free and a few dollars here and there. But this was a chance to make some good dough at 21 years old. So
Very
I'm in.
good.
So
Wow.
I did, and that was in April. In December, I was on a plane flying to Iran. We sat down in Tehran, and they had like 500 people at 3 o'clock in the morning waiting for the Marlboro ski team to step off this plane. It was insane. It was insane.
Wow.
So you can imagine the size of my head at that point. This was just like way too good. And the whole thing was based around kind of a ice capades on snow, where we
Okay.
actually built two jumps, and they were staggered so that it was on a ballet hill, and they had two jumps. And so we did ballet and tricks in and around. We had costumes and music, and we had our own portable rope tow. We had a full-on crew that set the rope tow up, built the jumps for us, and then we would just do about a 45-minute show, one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and then hit the road. And I'll never forget our Sunday show. We heard about him coming, but the Shah of Iran settles down in a helicopter right next to the jump, jumps out, two guys with Uzis in front, him in the middle, and two with Uzis in the back. Watched the show. He was a big skier, and watched the show. Came over, congratulated us, and said, "Way to go, boys!" Back in the helicopter, gone. And
Wow.
it was pretty crazy. But that year we traveled all throughout Europe. We went to Japan, we went to Finland, and just did these shows. And I really I enjoyed performing, I think, as much as anything. I just
Yeah.
really enjoyed performing and getting the feedback from the crowd and stuff. Last event, I didn't overshoot it. I overshot the landing gear, landed on my feet, but it was bulletproof and blew my knee right out the front. So I'm in Switzerland. I'm in the hospital. Everybody goes to the last event. I'm laying there going, oh boy, this is great. I get back home, and at that time they said, look, man, your ACL is stretched beyond repair.
Mm.
We're just going to leave it. And you can strengthen your leg and maybe get back into the scene, see what's going on. But so I kind of sat on that for a while. And then I got the opportunity to do some coaching, both in Squaw Valley, Killington, Vermont. And in those days, it was really the competitors who were the coaches. So some of the better competitors, they asked to come to the camps and coach the kids that came out. But I, to be honest with you, that's kind of where I found my forte in coaching. I just felt like that was what I enjoyed doing. That's what I was doing. And there was pressure for me to have my athletes perform, but not the same pressure that I had myself to perform.
Mhm.
And quite honestly, man, I was tired of getting hurt.
Yeah.
I was always down for the count. It seemed like it was that guy that I'd have a great day and I'd make a jump that was maybe in the realm of being on the podium, and I'd go and land and my spine blow off. So that
Mm.
party was over. So we'd wait for another week to do it, right? Anyway, so I am sitting in Killington, Vermont, coaching an event with a guy by the name of Mike Williams and Rusty Taylor, both competitive skiers at that time.
Okay.
And we were kind of a three stooges, if you will. We traveled together, did all of our stuff around the country. And we were sitting there coaching this camp one night and having a beer saying, oh, man, we've been coaching these guys for 2 or 3 years. Why don't we do our own camp? I said, great, sounds good. And I had just gotten back from doing those Marlowe shows. So I had this big pocket full of cash. I bought a new van and I decked out the back of it. Those guys jumped in the back. I jumped in the driver's seat. We drove cross country from Killington to Steamboat, where Rusty and Michael. Michael was born and raised here, and Rusty had been skiing out of Steamboat.
Okay.
So long story short, then I'll let you get back into some more questions. That's when we started the Great Western Freestyle Camp. And I went and saw the head of the Parks and Rec, which
Hmm.
is downtown. Have you been to Steamboat? I don't know
Oh
if you
yeah.
have or not. Oh yeah,
Oh
so
yeah.
you know
Bunch of
the,
time.
the
Yep.
downtown area where Calisane was. Not much going on right there. And I told him what we wanted to do. To construct this scaffolding 60 feet high and put these plywood on it and some stuff we call green meanies. And I was going to contract with one of the local farmers for 200 bales of fluffed up straw. We fluffed it, but he didn't fluff it. And set up a couple trampolines and learn how to do flips. He said, "You want to
Wow.
do what?" I said, "Yeah, trust me, man. It'll be entertainment for everybody and blah, blah, blah." No insurance concerns at that point. So he
Sure.
said, "Go for it." So we built the thing. And I'll tell you one funny story, then I'll sit down for a second here and let you talk. Mike Williams, really type A, high active guy, and a great competitor in his time.
Mhm.
Um, we had the jump done. We were busy, we were in short pants, and it was hotter than hell. And we were fluffing up straw, and it was in our hair, and we were sweating. It was an ugly job, and he just couldn't take it. So I gotta try this thing. I said, "Michael, we've only got 50 bales fluffed. We got to get at least 150 before you go." And he wouldn't listen, and he took off, did a front flyaway, and as he tucked over the top and opened up, guess where the straw was? It was back by the jump. He landed in the dirt, stuffed his face in there, separated his shoulder, and that was the beginning of the Great Western Freestyle. So that's how it kind of got going. And it was a bunch of renegades, really, a bunch of gypsies traveling the country, and every week we'd learn from each other. We'd make
Mhm.
up a new ballet trick, and then we'd all get together at the next competition and name it. And that's why a lot of these tricks came about. We'd all kind of sit around again, having a beer or two, and how would you think about this name or a wong banger? Like different types of stuff that we were doing. It was
Mhm.
crazy. So that's kind of how I got going. And then from that point on, I just stayed focused on coaching. That's what I really enjoyed doing.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a great introduction.
Probably more than you wanted.
No, no, definitely not more than I wanted. It's just I got a lot of questions to go back on now though. So, did you always so the draw out to Steamboat, I mean, was from Mike and Rusty? Had you been to Steamboat before, or were
Never,
you okay?
never, which is pretty ironic too. Yeah.
Okay. So you had never been out to Steamboat, but Mike and Rusty are like, "Hey, you got to come out. This is the
Yeah.
place where we should run this camp, or we should
Yeah.
start coaching some of these kids."
No slam dunks. Mike's family lived here. So we
Mhm.
stay with my mom and dad. We got a place to stay. I think we can work this thing out with the Parks and Rec. And so it was just a summertime gig. And what was happening on the mountain in 1975, just before I got here, Okanta, Look Bindings,
Mhm.
way back in the day. They were kind of big into the forefront of hot dog skiing at that time, and they put up a purse of $5,000 at each event, and they had one in Steamboat right before I came. And again, it was $5,000, and guys were doing somersaults, and one guy says, "Hey, man, that's pretty easy. I'll just do two.
Mhm.
I should win this thing, right?" Well, he'd never been upside down more than once. And as you're probably aware, that's a thing we call spatial orientation. And when you lose it, pal, you don't know where you are, up or down, or whatever it is. And sadly, he came in short, cut his tips, drove his face in the snow, broke his neck. And so it was a real sad deal. But for me, I walked into the president of the ski corps office at that time, telling him my plans for getting a skiing program going here for sports club kids and teaching bumps, ballet, and aerials. And he
Mhm.
said, "I don't want to talk to you out. As long as I'm here sitting in this place, there'll never be any more hot dog skiing on our mountain." And
Wow.
I walked out the door. Yeah. And I did that for 5 presidents before and well, I guess the good news was they changed every year for like 4 years. And I
Mhm.
finally got one guy to bite off on it, and we started things rolling for that way. So we were able to use the summer training down at Hallison, and then they let me inch in to start doing it at the mountain.
Wow. So that's most certainly, and one of the big questions and overarching questions is really seems to speak to the perseverance. And so for you, I mean, just throughout the career, I mean, it seems like you've really had to persevere. It seems like there's been several times our sport's certainly been on life support. I mean, it seemed like it was quite a battle with the IOC just to be able to try and push to get freestyle as an exhibition sport, let alone a full blown sport into the Olympics. And it seems like there's been a few times where, with the insurance and everything else, freestyle has really kind of been at odds. So how does that perseverance? I mean, where does that kind of come from? I mean, is it just that sheer love of the sport and wanting to be able to teach it to the next generation, or for people to be able to learn there? And just tilt your camera down just a little bit so we can get a little more of your face. Right? Yeah, perfect. There you go.
I'd say probably the latter, the love of the sport.
Love of the sport.
I've worked with many people, and I got my own kids now too. One of the things I've always tried to pass on is that find a passion.
Mm-hmm.
Find a passion. And for me, there was a lot of perseverance because I got knocked down several times, but it was the passion that kept me going. I couldn't see not doing it, and I saw some of the success that we had with some of the kids. I saw the program, and the thrill, I guess, was still, as I said a minute ago, was this crazy group of guys and girls traveling the world doing a bunch of nonsense stuff, man, that was super exciting, and it was a highly visible, and the spectator appeal on it was just crazy. So I think, quite honestly, Bobby, it was the passion.
Mm-hmm.
Did I have perseverance? I had to, probably, but I never really noticed that. I noticed that, hey, if one guy didn't want me to do it, next guy would maybe let me do it. And I just kind of settled into Steamboat, didn't want to go anywhere else at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kept bumping my head on the door until finally somebody gave up. And then from that point, for a little while, it was smooth sailing, only to find out that then the insurance dropped us. And then we had this issue. And, when the Olympic thing came around, there was a bunch of us, but there was a bunch of people that from 76, we had, I'm not sure I remember exactly, but at least 3, if not 4, paralysis accidents. And it shut everything down in the US. That's why I was telling them on the front part of this, we traveled to Canada or to Europe, wherever it was, because it just wasn't allowed to happen on any US ski resorts. And so with that in mind, there was a lot of people that were kind of in the forefront that decided that wasn't for them, and they pursued other careers and moved on. But there was a handful of us, both European, Canadian, and myself, that were, I would say, on the forefront of dealing and talking with the IOC and trying to sell this thing. And first, what was interesting is that they said they felt like they already had too many judged sports, too much subjectivity. So if you guys want to get involved in moguls, especially, we'll do it, but we're based solely on time. So we all looked at each other sitting in the room and say, you're telling us that you're going to do a stopwatch at the top, at the bottom, whoever gets across the hill first. I said, you want to talk about having some problems, man? You're going to have people all over the place. So that was our first discussion. We said we went back to the drawing board, because we actually talked about it in '84 in Sarajevo.
Okay.
But it wasn't going to happen with these guys. And so when we got it through to them and we talked about it and so on and so forth, they gave us that opportunity in Calgary. But I wasn't the sole proprietor then. There was a bunch of guys that were all together that had that passion that helped push this thing through. And I think it took that initiative. And I think too, what started to happen is freestyle became, as I mentioned, a highly visible, super spectator sport. If you remember, probably before your time, but back in the day, there wasn't a ski magazine cover coming out that didn't have somebody freestyle related on it, bumps or jumps or air or whatever it was. And remember, everybody went to short skis at that time, so that was a big sell for us because we were all doing it on short skis. And it was crazy, the saying we had going, because we were always battling against alpine, right? Alpine wasn't not like it is in Austria or Europe, but it was still the deal in the States. It wasn't freestyle. And some guys came up with a T-shirt one year that said, "Better to be short and stiff than long and limp." So that was kind of our motto there for a while. But so I think that that was just it seemed like when I look back on it, I was going at it 24/7, but never felt like I had to get up and grind myself from a 9 to 5. It was always a passion that kept me going.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. So you start in, and what, in 1981 is the first junior national team? Like, how does that kind of come about into some of that, the coaching aspect? I mean, Great Western Freestyle, you got the bales of hay, and where are you doing that? I mean,
Right
in
in front of the
Steamboat,
mountain. Yeah,
right in front of the mountain. Okay.
of Howelson, right in front of Howelson.
Right in front of Howelson.
There was just, if you're looking at the lodge
Hmm.
from the say from the parking lot up, we were
Hmm.
just to the left
Okay.
and right just between there and home base on the baseball diamond. So it was crazy when we'd be over there in the afternoon training, bouncing on trampolines, flipping off this thing, and there'd be guys playing softball because softball was really big with this softball leagues, co-ed and stuff.
Hmm.
And as soon as they'd hear the sound of the skis,
Hmm.
everybody in the baseball field would stop, turn and look, watch the jump, and then they go back to play baseball. It was pretty wild. But so I think because of that, like I said, a lot of stuff guys started dropping out.
Hmm.
Competitions, anything that was going on World Cup wise, was mostly in Europe.
Hmm.
And then it came the need for a US junior freestyle coach.
Okay.
And I was kind of the, not like I was the best guy out there. I was probably the only guy out there that was still doing it.
Hmm.
And so I got a call from the folks in at that time in Colorado Springs. Actually, in that time we were in Boston. Our headquarters were in Boston for the ski team. Then we went to Colorado Springs and then to Park City.
Hmm.
And wanted me to come out and do an event. We were in, I think, Saas-Fee in Switzerland,
Okay.
and just kind of come along with 15 parents and kind of do that thing. And they liked what I was doing. So in 80, 81, I believe it was, I got the job with the US junior freestyle team.
Hmm.
And that was an interesting deal because it was me and what 15 athletes, but 15 parents. So you can imagine the get-go in our sport. And I dreaded the flight over because it was, I'd be back in the back and sitting there, and here would come one walking down the aisle. And as soon as that person got done yakking in my ear, here come the next parent down the aisle. And so anyway, I did that for 2 years, and then they felt like we had this again a second band of gypsies traveling the World Cup and doing freestyle with nobody to give them any direction. So they
Hmm.
pulled me on board and made me the first US Freestyle Ski Team coach, and that happened in '83, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
But boy, that was something else because again, bigger kids, bigger problems. Right? I didn't get so many parents, which was okay, but I was the guy. I did all the accommodations. I did all the travel arrangements. I coached girls. I coached guys. I coached ballet, aerials, and moguls. 40 athletes. And my goodness, it was, and again, I'll tell you that it would be 10, 11, 12-hour days. And I'd be anxious to get back to my room sometime, but never had a problem getting up and doing it all over again. What I did have to do after a while as a sports psychologist was tone some of these people down. This was life or death to them.
Hmm.
And we had a different event every week in a different country. So we'd be on the bus on Monday morning, traveling from Austria to Germany, Germany to Switzerland, Switzerland to France. And a guy has a bad run. One of my favorites is Steve Destovich. He lived it, man. And when it was bad, we spent lots of hours doing this, just talking about it. So after a while, I'd have to have these little yellow sticky notes on my
Hmm.
door. And I basically it would say 10 p.m., the party's over. So I'd have them knocking on my door at 10, 11, sometimes 12, not being able to sleep. What am I going to do next week, Park? How are we going to fix this thing up? And so I felt like a big part of my job at that point became more of a sports psychologist than it
Hmm.
did a technical coach.
Yeah.
These guys were, 10 times the skier that I was, but I had a visual to see what was happening, see what was doing wrong, and implement some of the right information to them. But really, it was getting their head in the game so they could perform on a week-to-week basis. And as you know, in this sport, in any sport, it's what goes on between your ears. Now, you can be the best guy in the world on practice day, but when the lights goes on and the music comes up, if you can't put it down in 28 seconds, then you come back the next week and try it again.
Hmm.
And that was the deal that I felt like that I was most successful with, is being able to learn to talk to different athletes. And as you can imagine, male, female, it's a whole
Sure.
different game when I'm
Right.
talking to a female than when I'm talking to a male. And it becomes a whole different game from one female to the next.
Hmm.
So that was really what I felt in the end. My job spent more of that time just learning to get into their head and get them to perform to their optimum. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but I think for the most part it was pretty successful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I think the number that I had was 313 podiums and 114 wins, I think was what I had
You know what?
written
And
down in
your
my
your
notes there.
guess is probably better than mine, Bobby. I can't. I see some of that in print once in a while. It could be a little bit embellished by one or two, but it's about what it
Let's
was.
see what we got here. 114 World Cup victories, 332 podiums. Yeah, I'd say that most of the time, most days that you were able to get it to click.
Yeah,
Now, was there any, I guess, similarities throughout most? I mean, if you're dealing with 40 different athletes, 40 different personalities or whatever at that time, like what was, I mean, I know you got to have, I was like to say, you got to have a different arrow in the quiver. It can't just be the same
yeah.
thing over and over again. Each, as you said, each person's different and you have to be able, but were there certain things that you were able to, certain cues or mantras that kind of the whole team was able to rally around and be like, that's right, that's going to
I
help
think what
on a day to
happened
day?
in the end,
Mhm.
which maybe made me more successful or at least more accepted, was not pretending I knew everything, which I thought I had to do in the beginning, right? I
Mhm.
was that guy. And I got to the point where I learned we did a lot of sports psychology. Actually, we did some seminars out in San Diego one year.
Okay.
And I just early on just felt like it was so much more from the neck up than it was from the neck down.
Mhm.
And I got to the point that I learned to say, I don't know, but I will tell you one thing, I'll find out. And I wasn't afraid to go to the French coach or the Swiss coach or anybody else that looked like they had it going on.
Mhm.
And, with our best translation that we could back and forth, I would gather more information. And so there was, the people that are at the top, the Nelson Carmichaels, the Steve Desoviches, the Don Weinbrecht, they are the Michael Jordan, the Tiger Woods, they've got that stuff going on.
Mhm.
So what we would try to do is have some of the other skiers implement what they're doing. So what became of it, you're trying to, or Edgar Grosbrand, some of
Sure.
the guys that were the best of the best. And so we'd watch. We'd stand at the bottom of the hill. I'd say, let's go. We're out here today. We're going to watch for about an hour. Then we'll get up there and do it. And so we learned a lot by visualization and seeing what other guys were doing and girls. And I think that was the thing that um, I think that was really one of the things that made the US team pretty successful.
Mhm.
They weren't afraid to say, I got it all. I know what I'm doing. And I'd say, well, you don't. If you did, we'd be winning every single week and we would be doing it. And the other thing that would come about was it was all about dress rehearsal. I'd spend a lot of time. We'd ski sections like people do now. We talk about the turns between, and we talk about the takeoff on the jump, but we'd always finish with 2 or 3 or 4 runs, top to bottom. I don't
Mhm.
care whether you blow out. What happens? You get up and you keep going because that could
Mhm.
happen tomorrow. And if you're
Right.
not used to that, or losing one ski out to the left or the right, or getting back on your skis and recovering instead of stopping, starting over, recirculating the whole thing, that was what was really good. So that dress rehearsal was super important to get those on a regular basis and do them over and over again. So, as they say, it just becomes one more day because you've done it all the time. But if you don't do that and all week long, and boy, again, I go back to Desovich, he'd have a bad practice run. He'd pull out of the course, to himself and then jump back in and do it again. And after a while, we started going top to bottom, top to bottom. So they're all different. They're all different. I had to work intertwining a lot of ways to approach them, but I think my approach had to be more on the verbal side
Mhm.
because I couldn't demonstrate for them what was going on. So I had to talk to them and say, check this guy out, check this guy out. That's what
Mhm.
I'm talking about. Look at the positioning there, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think that was really more of it than anything else of being able to uh, get into their head and having them respect what I had to say.
Mhm.
Because I think in the beginning, like I said, they've been doing it for 2 years on their own, and I had guys that were only and girls, maybe uh, 3 or 4 years younger than me.
Sure.
So it was, I was just a kind of new kid on the block, if you will, and had to try to prove myself as well as the athletes proving themselves.
Mhm. Very interesting. Now, I mean, one thing that really sticks out as well as you're talking about earlier is just having those 40 different athletes and not only the coaching aspect, but then like I just think about the ACOM. And like the flights, like we just booked all, some of our stuff for like the first leg of some of the World Cup tour through like Christmas. And I'm thinking about, all right, you got 40 different athletes. That's a lot of hotel rooms. That's a lot of like seats on a plane. That's a lot of different, like, that's a lot of moving parts in itself. I know a lot of people talk about the on-hill stuff, but how did you deal with the ACOM and like, now it's even easier with computers and everything else. Like back
Yeah.
then, that had to be just a monster.
It was crazy. I ended up in the end getting a program director. Mary Horwath was her name.
Mhm.
And she was a great gal. And she, was back in the office. She helped me kind of get going. And we booked a lot of stuff through the ski team and through the office, but it was never done right. It would get to the airport and say, what do you got? 40 people here? What do you do with all this luggage? 30,000 pounds of luggage and so on and so forth. And they would never want, so when it was group check-in,
Mhm.
one guy, they don't want anything to do with all 40 people. So it's me, all the people, check them all. Well, how many bags you got? I don't know, 75, something like that. And I'll tell you a funny story. We did an exchange program with the Russians back in the day.
Mhm.
And we sent some guys over there to learn a little bit about their training techniques and what they're doing. And then they sent some back to here. It wasn't so much they watched us, but they wanted me to oversee the travel for the Russians. So here we are. We fly from Lake Placid to Breckenridge. All right. We get into Breckenridge 3 o'clock in the morning, and we have got, I don't know, 80 lost pieces of luggage. Right. So they didn't want to talk to all the guys. They want to talk to me. So I had to go around to all Russians and US, grab everybody's bag tags. So I show up at the front desk, and there's bag tags spread everywhere, pal. It was the most bizarre thing. And so I'm looking over here in the corner. Here's the Russians. They got their carry-on up behind their head, feet up, closing their eyes, kind of snoozing, and with a smile on their face. And I said, "What's so freaking funny, you guys?" He said, "We thought this never happens in the U.S." So there I am trying to explain to them what was going on. We finally made it. Everything got there, but that was I could go on with stories that are absolutely crazy about the travel, and then getting there, the rooms aren't set up right, and then getting there and 40 athletes, 40 pretty high strung personalities. I'm not sleeping with them. I'm not rooming with her. I'm not doing this. So, and really kind of crazy. Or I had, did you ever know the gal by name of Haley Wolf?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, well, Haley was one of my better female skiers, but Haley was a um, uh, nice way to say this. Uh, she was just an East Coast girl that pretty much had her own way along the way. Right.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you, Bobby, there was not once, twice, or three times, but several times we'd get off the plane, we'd be getting organized, getting everybody in the bus, and Haley would be missing. And at first I was panicking. I lost one of my athletes. And everybody says, "Come on, Park, we got to go. We got to get to the hotel." Boom, boom, boom. So I go. I said, "We go," and hopefully no cell phones, so we'll figure out how we're going to get her. Sure enough, the bus pulls in. I'm going through the rooming list, trying to deal with who doesn't like this person, who don't want to sleep with this person, and taxi cab shows up, and the trunk is jarred open, and it is filled with shopping bags. Where she takes time to find out where the clothes. We go to Milan. It was a nightmare because she'd go downtown Milan and just shop her brains out, and then show up an hour or 2 or 3 hours late, man. So those are a lot of the issues that I dealt with. That was the biggest part of my mother and father role, as well as a sports psychologist. But yeah, that part I will never miss. That will never miss that, because that was a shit show, my friend. So
Yeah, I mean, every year it always is going to the same. I mean, this tour is pretty similar. The last few years
yeah,
it's the same stops, and like, the luggage is not showing up. And for like 5 or 6 athletes, you're like
yeah,
stressed trying to figure out, all right, we got to make sure like how are we going to get the luggage on time? How are they going to get enough time to like get their proper sleep or whatever else? There's just so many different things.
yeah.
Like 40 athletes, like totally blows my mind of like, and then you add in the I don't really like him, I don't really like her, like I don't want to. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
and it's and never was. I don't really like them. Well, actually, there were some that didn't like each other, but as far as rooming together, there was definitely some concerns, and I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then check this out. One time we travel, and these guys talked me into saying we got vans one year, so I had to find not only myself, but I had to find four competent people to drive the other vans.
Mhm.
with the athletes in there. And some of these guys are 18 to 26, and to have a van and zip around the Autobahn and stuff. Oh man, we wrecked vans. We tore the doors off of some vans. It was crazy. One year, they literally talked to me, said, "Hey, my nickname, the way I kind of drove the bus and drove the team, I became the general quite quickly." And so that was my nickname. And here comes the general. You don't want to get the wrath of the general, man. Backing over here and doing this. So thank goodness, at least when I walked into the room, they'd quiet down a little bit. But they said, "General, we got to figure this travel thing out. I mean, we get over here and we're always scrambling. What do you think of the idea that we all get our own cars, right? No, two or three in a car?" I said, "Well, maybe it might be cheaper and blah, blah, blah." Anyway, they talked me into it. And we had Audis, we had BMWs, we had, I can't even, Mercedes. And, the deal was, here's where we leave. I want you in this place in 4 hours. I'd see whatever the timeline was and go in 4 hours.
Yeah.
And sometimes those guys leave in the parking lot. It was a smoke show. We got videos of these guys, the smoke just going and gone. Yeah,
Oh,
how
shit.
I think that I got by with that, but they found out with the board of directors back at home, and that only lasted 1 year. But it was quite entertaining, pal. It was a road rally in the Autobahn sometimes. So we got away with a lot of stuff, and we were lucky that nobody got killed and nobody got seriously hurt. But yeah, it was something else.
So managing all those people, and like that's where you have to have a little bit of be a little bit even keeled as a personality, because I feel like if you have more of that A type personality like that, you can't, that stuff really won't fly, it seems.
It was interesting because as I just mentioned to you, there had to be, and I learned this as far as early on how I was going to get through to these guys. There had to be a guy that is your buddy and your friend, and but there had to be the guy that was again driving the bus. And so
Sure.
this whole thing with the general came about because again, there'd be shit going on in the hotel rooms, and I'd get a knock on my door from the manager at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, that only happened a couple times. I just marched down to the room. I said, "Okay, guys, party's over. We got to start getting serious about what we're doing, blah, blah, blah." And I guess my wife tells me this, and my kid tells me this, my kids, um, I got to look, and I don't have to say anything. If I come into a room and I got that look going, I'm literally, it would just like you could hear a pin drop sometimes. And I'd kind of walk away and I'd get out in the hallway and kind of chuckle to myself a little bit. I said, whatever I did, I finally think I got their attention. And so I had a little bit of both.
Mhm.
I'm that guy that could be an entertainer, a jovial, a friend, and have a smile on my face most of the time. But there was times when I had to turn around, and I think that's quite honestly, I think that was where some of that respect came from too.
Mhm.
Because I couldn't have been that other guy all the time. I had to be the guy to drop the bomb or drop the hammer once in a while. And I did it several times, quite honestly, because I just had a group of people that weren't as serious as Steve Desovich or Nelson Carmichael. They have a bad run, and boom, all they want to do is head to the Sunday night gathering, where it was a big party and food and booze, and then I'd be dragging them out of their hotel room on Monday
Right.
morning, leaving the bus is leaving. So it was kind of there was a happy medium in there where I had to do a little bit of both. And so it was funny because you've asked most of those guys about the general versus about Park Smalley, they'd be two completely different stories. Because when I came down, especially at 2 in the morning, man, I wasn't a happy camper most of the time.
Yeah, I
So
can imagine.
yeah, yeah,
That's a good, yeah, it's a fine line to walk, but I mean,
yeah.
athletes are pretty good at pushing buttons. That's
Well,
too.
they sure are, they?
They love their
They
bound.
are.
They love to see where the boundaries really are. Let's see what we
Yeah,
can get away
yeah,
with till he really
yeah,
snaps.
yeah. Exactly. That's exactly right. So, anyway, it's all good.
So, you get what was the final push where the IOC finally decided to allow, moguls, aerials, ballet kind of in as the exhibition? What was
I
that
think that
push?
a fellow by the name of John Johnson or Johnny Johnson, he was a Canadian competitor in the early
Mhm.
days, went on to become the program director for the Canadian national team,
Okay.
but he also became a member of the IOC, and that was kind of our shoe in. He was super smart guy, man, very intellectual, and had a great way with his words to talk to people and stuff. So our committee just kind of, you know, gathered around him, if you will.
Hmm.
And I honestly believe Johnny had a lot to do with he and Peter. Peter was a big part of it too.
Hmm.
Peter's still heavily competitive then, but the Canadian guys had an seemed like an in because we were going to Calgary that first time, right, as a
Hmm.
demonstration. So we kind of leaned on those guys with some support of some U.S. Dignitaries, and I got to a point that I wasn't the guy. I was the guy early on verbalizing, we got to get this thing going. Then I was able to take a back seat and let these guys drive the bus. And I learned a long time ago that, again, as I told you, I don't know everything. But what I do know is I can find the person that does, and
Right.
then let them lead the ship. And that's what those guys ended up doing. So really, it was a big Peter and Johnny Johnson and a whole bunch of guys from that era. And with that being the Canadian event in Calgary,
Hmm.
was a huge opportunity, I think, for us in a positive way to bring that around. So,
Very cool. Yeah, to finally get that. So I guess just some of those favorite experiences for you as a coach. I mean, a real 114 World Cup victories. You have the Olympic experience. You have all these different moments. Do you have any? I'm not going to ask you to pick one, but do you have like a few that really stand out where maybe somebody was like struggling, having a really off day, and then the lights are on, and you kind of have a conversation with them before their run, and you really get that light bulb, or you get them to make the switch, and then they come out and perform kind of when it matters, and really rewarding experience, I guess, as a coach for some of your athletes.
I can, like I said, I had lots, but quite
Mhm.
honestly, I've got to go back to my roots. And when I did that uh, straw ramp and the
Mhm.
trampolines at Hallison Hill,
Yeah.
my first student was Chris Feddersen.
Okay.
My second student was Nelson Carmichael, and my third was Cooper Shell.
Wow.
So I started working with those guys when they were punks. Bobby Aldegari came when he was 12, and to see those guys come to where they came, and my career kind of paralleled theirs, because when they made the team,
Mhm.
I became the coach, and I'd already been coaching them regionally for 4 or 5 years. So we kind of walked through this thing together. I think Cooper Shell, probably the most talented mogul skier I had ever been around.
Really?
And I'll say that around the world. Yeah,
Hmm.
his technique and his technical skills were just so far above. And I think that's the reason that he and Des became such good pals, because Des was the same way. They were both technicians. And if you watch those guys, their ski to snow contact, their absorption, the positioning of their upper body, just there was nobody out there until Donna came on. And I would say that Donna was probably one of the best technical skiers in the world, male or female.
Hmm.
Um, but here comes Nelson, and he is a few years younger and extremely talented guy, but in the beginning couldn't put it together on a
Hmm.
week to week basis and got extremely frustrated with himself. And we would just walk through a lot of stuff together. We were in Japan together when his dad was killed in a car accident. So we flew home together, and so we've had this great bond for a long, long time. But what I saw from him is that guys like Desovich and Coop had so much natural talent that they didn't, not Des so much, but Coop, they didn't have the work ethic that Nelson did.
Hmm.
And to see him rise one step at a time with that work ethic, he just never gave up. And if he hadn't stumbled out of the gate in '88, he would have
Hmm.
won that one hands down. His ability was there, but again, came out 2 turns into it and stumbled. To come back and win bronze was great. By that time, he had some heavy competition going on, with Edgar and the rest of that crew. But he remains, he was kind of the silent warrior, if you were,
Okay.
never boastful about himself, but you could see him always making a go. And when he got there, when he won that one, I think it was 6 World Cups one year, and so on and so forth, he had it all going. So that was, one. And then Donna became we just became great friends. She came out there and she was kind of the golden girl, if you will,
Hmm.
from her East Coast skiing, but hadn't had a lot of early skiing on. She started skiing later in life, but she had a natural ability. So when she made the team, she wasn't real outgoing and real boisterous. So I kind of took her under my wing, and we just worked out together. And she appreciated what I did for her, and she just was it was a fun time to be around those two in particular. On the same token, Chris Feddersen is an aerialist. The guy just rose to the top, but again, he had so many days where he should have won. And then with second jump, we take a tumble or something happens. And another guy that I got real close with was Lane Spina in ballet, and he's the one that took the silver in Calgary when it was a demonstration. Another tremendous kid. And it's funny now because Fuzz and Cooper and some of the other kids that I coached were all in Steamboat not too long ago, and I was going to meet him downtown for a beer and just chat him up old times. And I was with my wife and one of my friends. We ran into the grocery store or someplace like that, and they go, "What do you got going on this afternoon?" I said, "Well, I'm going down to the local watering hole and hang out with a couple of my kids I used to coach." And Lisa tapped me on the shoulder. She goes, "Mark, sorry, pal, they're not kids anymore. They're 50 and 60 years old." I said, "Holy shit, man." And it just flashed back on, man, oh man, because I had to add 10 years to most of all these guys and girls. And yeah, it's amazing that it's come so far and to still be friends. Some of my very best friends are from the guys and girls I met in skiing, around the world as far, but here in the US in particular. I don't know if you know, but Fuzz is I think he was inducted into the US Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame about 2018 or 19, something like that. And come to find out, I didn't know until just recently that he was a big proponent of nominating me for the US Ski and Snowboarding Hall of Fame. And shoot, I got a call from him about 3 weeks ago. He said, "You check your email much?" I said, "No, man, I'm not on it that much." He said, "Why don't you check it today?" I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Just check it and give me a call back." And sure enough, I had been not only nominated, but I got accepted. And I called him back. I said, "You little fucker." I'm sorry, you can probably edit that out if you have to. Yeah, he just said it's so long overdue, and there's a couple of us that just never gave up. And he said, what we found out is when we finally got to nominate you, he said they got a call back from the ski team. He said, just don't expect anything right away. Most people, it takes 4 or 5 years to get in before you do it. And he said, you might have a lot of friends out there, pal, because you got in the first year. So I said, wow, it's pretty cool. So humbling, very humbling. And to come kind of after so much of my career, it's just been pretty cool, and I'm excited. It's in Lake Placid in the end of March, and it'd been nice if it would have been the last 3 years. It was Sun Valley, Park City, and Jackson Hole. They decided I'm going in Lake Placid, but anyway, those are types of friendships that have developed over the years, and we can be gone from each other for years at a time, and we just pick up right where we left off, and we get back together. So it's pretty special. Pretty special.
Yeah. Very cool. And congratulations. I mean, long overdue. I mean, some of those names that have gotten in before, you should certainly deservedly be in there. And I know for the Colorado Snow Sports Hall of Fame, you were the first freestyle inductee when they did that in 2003. So that was a big honor for you. I mean, yeah.
Pretty cool. And it's almost 20 years. I was 50 then, and I'm going to be 72. So 22 years apart. But wow, man, it's just when we talk about stuff like this brings back so many memories for me because I've kind of, got myself away from it. I'm not doing any consulting with the ski area anymore, and I'm spending my time. Maybe I told you, I'm in Mexico now. My wife and I bought a place down there. Stand-up paddle surfing is kind of my go-to, and I skiing anymore on my back. I can't sit on the chairlift. I can make turns, but so I ride the chairlift up the gondola, standing up, make 2 or 3 runs in some corduroy, and then get out of there. But now we head out in January. We're gone all winter. It's all good. Okay. Yeah, it's all good.
Gotcha. Well, no, that's I mean, it's interesting we bring up Fuzz. I've never I think I've gotten probably an autograph from Fuzz on like a Sprint Ultimate Airwave poster, probably in my garage somewhere in my memory box. But I've never but you certainly are influential with him because he does the Flying Ace All Stars like aerial shows similar to the Marlboro team from back in the day. He does those all summer at the Olympic Park. So certainly have to have some influence there.
You got Trace Worthington, as you know, started it. He and Fuzz started it together. Flying Ace came from Flying Ace, Trace the Ace Worthington. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. A lot of that stuff came full circle too. Is that when I was doing my broadcasting, in fact, right after '98,
Hmm.
I was excited because we were going 2 years later to Salt Lake City for 2020, and I'd done a bunch of work for NBC, although my last three Olympics were with CBS.
CBS. Yeah.
And one of the guys I worked with is a play-by-play capacity. Um, so I got to tell you something, Park. He said, "Don't get used to it." He said, "Pretty soon they're going to look for somebody with a little less gray hair and maybe an earring with a couple of World Cup victories." And sure enough, Trace walked right in there in 2020 and has been there ever since and done a hell of a job in his
Hmm.
broadcasting. But so it's kind of fun to see, and he commented me many times and was gracious about saying, "Thanks for all I learned from you and listening and talking to me," and kind of I mentored. He just did some events when I was checking out, so I helped. But yeah, it's just kind of like all in the family, maybe. I don't
Hmm.
know. It's a lot of that has come around, and but Fuzz is one of those guys. Like I said, he started with me at 12, and we've been friends ever since. Man, it's
Hmm.
crazy, crazy.
Now, what was the deciding factor on starting to step aside from coaching and kind of get out of that and getting into broadcasting? How did that kind of come about?
Um, well, first off, I had a couple kids. Now I have
Hmm.
a son, Tucker, now 37, I think, or 36, and I have a daughter, Sammy, she's 34. And my wife was great along the way. She was my number one fan, and she supported me and rode the wave with those kids for a while. And I just said, I can't be that guy that misses all of that.
Hmm.
So while I was doing the coaching, they always say, "Yeah, we're standing here with the Park Smalley US team coach. Park, who are your guys? What are we looking for?" And so I did a bunch of stand-ups for them. Then I had guys from GGP, Golden Gator Productions out of San Francisco, who at that
Okay.
time had done quite a bit of freestyle coverage. So, you got to think about it, broadcasting when you get out of coaching. And it just kind of clicked. I hadn't really thought about it. And so I went back and I talked to her a little bit. I had then started to pass the reins on. Wayne Hildebrand came on board. We had a mogul coach. All of a sudden, we had discipline coaches. We had a good program director. And I'll be honest with you, the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, they wanted me to move to Park City.
Hmm.
And I said, not going to happen. They said, if you can't move, then you got to be over here at least once a week. And so I went back home and we talked about it. And I said, I think it's time. So
Yeah.
I checked out at that point and I went back to the Winter Sports Club and I
Okay.
coached the Winter Sports Club for another 3 years. And it was great. It was refreshing because I got to coach kids that really appreciated what you had to say and didn't think they knew it all. And I saw some guys really rise to the occasion. But while I was doing that, in those days there wasn't much money in this thing. So the contract I had with them, they're going to have to allow me to do my television as well as coaching them here.
Hmm.
And that's how kind of Bobby got involved back here in coaching and so on and so forth. But yeah, it was family related that I just felt like it. And then I could have probably done more broadcasting, but I also found out that there's only a handful of guys. Trace is one, and there's a couple of swimmers that got gone from an analyst to play by play. Play
Hmm.
by play guys have a journalism degree, and then once they're in, they don't quit until they die, right? So
Right.
you step into their spot, it doesn't happen. So it becomes for me, well, you want to go do the belly flop championships in South Carolina, or you want to go do a dog show over here, and they did the salary was peanuts, but it was a step up the ladder. And I said at that point, that's not what I want to do either. So that's when I
Hmm.
just kind of shut everything down and going from there. My parents both died in 1995, about 10 months apart, 70.
Hmm.
And my dad was a stockbroker, and he got all three of us boys kind of involved in investing and stuff. Back in those days, it was buy and hold and hang on to your hat. But we started trading options,
Okay.
and I've been an option trader ever since. And it's allowed me to anywhere I want in the world, open my computer up and make a little bit of money, and hopefully not lose too much and continue to make a living out of it. So that's what I ended up doing, and it was nice that I found that opportunity. I also did some real estate development here in Steamboat, and for the first 4 years or so, I did quite a bit of consulting still for the ski area for some of the
Hmm.
bigger events. But after that, I just kind of phased out, and then my back just started going bad, and I couldn't get on the mountain. And I can go on and on, but it was time. It was time. It was a
Hmm.
new generation taking over, and for me, it was the right move for sure.
Now, how much, I mean, has Steamboat changed
Oh, God.
from the hay bales, from Howland Hill back in 76? I mean, how different is it?
It's so crazy, man. I mean, not only has it changed, one of the things we've been talking about recently, we said, gosh, the good thing is we'll never be Aspen or Vail. When we moved from Denver, 3.5 hours away, we had our own little community, little ranch style stuff. When I first came here the first year, 76, guys were still riding their horses down town, one stoplight. It was
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, it was just really a great feel, the community and stuff. And met my wife here, Lisa, and I raised my kids here, and so that was interesting. But now it's become Bobby, unfortunately, and money breeds that stuff, and not everybody wants to spend that kind of money they spend in Aspen. They can find the same thing and move to Steamboat and have
Mhm.
three or four times for their buck what they get down there.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's changed mostly. It's just grown substantially, and the airport has gone crazy, and traffic coming into town. And so we actually went through a bunch of real estate here over the years, and we moved out of town. We live up on Rabbit Ears now,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
so it's a special place. We look out over Lake Catamount, over the flat tops, and Safeway, 8 minutes, golfing 5 minutes, church 3 minutes. I hardly ever go to town, man. And if I do, it's funny because as we get older, we get, as we start to lose some of our memory. And I run into some people at the store, and hey, Park, how you doing? I'm going, hey, good pal, how you doing? And what do you mean, pal? Man, my name is George, whatever. I said, yeah, I've only got three friends left in Steamboat. They said, you're kidding. I said, no, buddy, pal, and man. He said, well, you called me man last week, so now I'm buddy this week. Anyway, that's kind of where it goes. And I tell people, if you want to see me, come to City Market or Safeway. That's where you'll find me. But other than that, I'm back up on the hill and enjoying that life.
That's awesome. Yeah. Rabbit
Yeah,
Ears,
it's
that's a
great.
gorgeous, gets a gorgeous view. And that, yeah,
Oh
it's a
man.
really had some
Yeah,
treacherous drives on the way to Winter Park from Park City on Rabbit.
I,
Have definitely had some hairy ones going through Rabbit Ears.
we had some times going to Winter Park, Mary Jane, for some of our events back in the Rocky Mountain days.
Hmm.
And we had a buddy that had a Suburban, and I used to do it with Fuzz and Nelson and Coop and one other person in the back of my Toyota pickup. I'd throw them all in there. Moms would fix me a bunch of frozen lasagna and spaghetti. We'd hit the road and go down there and do it. And so I talked to this guy who's a friend of mine, and he had a Suburban that he used for work, but didn't use it in the wintertime, and put this big steel rack up on top where he could put all his tools and ladders and stuff. And I talked him into letting us use it. And so his name was Danny, and so Danny became Dano. And then back in the day of it, was it Hawaii 5-0, Bookham Dano, that deal. So it became the Dano Bookham Mobile. And he gave it to me to use. And he thought it'd be cool. He got two JBL speakers that were bigger than the back seat, set them in the way back, hooked it up to the stereo, my 8-track stereo, of course, in the front. And we'd plug that thing and head out. And again, these guys talked me into letting them ride on the rack one time coming home. It is snowing like a bandit. We have a picture of us with his no helmets nowadays, his hat, goggles, and snow just flying in his face. I was trying to drive like 30 or 40 miles an hour. He'd take his turn up there, we'd stop, we'd give somebody else the hat and goggles. They'd jump up into the rack, big metal rack, so they could hang on, and then just we'd fly down the road, man. It's just nutty stuff. Nutty stuff. So yeah, I remember some crazy ones and some that, just like you said, it was a blinding snowstorm to get from Steamboat to Winter Park or Mary Jane was all day sucker for sure.
Yeah, definitely some treacherous drives there to get through for sure. Now,
Yeah.
talking about do you miss the broadcasting at all? Because I mean, like, I feel like I'm listening to the voice of my childhood when I'm 8 years old, or like Sprint Grand National in Winter Park was at that. But I got so many VHS tapes I've tried to convert to digital that are you commentating. Like I have to really thank you for giving such great play-by-play and like Mosley's gold medal winning run and the Flying Finns that were coming on then, Yanni Laudala, Sammy Moosin, and the rest of that whole crew. And then,
Yeah.
Kai Satoy on the women's side and all. Yeah, it was.
You know what? I wouldn't say as much as I do coaching.
Mhm. Okay.
That's where my love was. Broadcasting was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing the broadcast afterwards. It gave me a little bit more time to interact with the athletes than it did when I was in a coaching capacity. But I don't think so. Bobby, I think if I had to do it over again, I would, my coaching thing was what gave me the most reward, and
Mhm.
that I enjoyed as much as anything. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy because, you're supposed to be impartial when you're a broadcaster, especially in the Olympics, and I'm telling you what, I was with Fred Robinson, who still does a lot of, he does the US Open and Wimbledon. He does a lot of tennis work, but been a broadcaster with them. He was the voice of San Francisco Giants for years.
Mhm.
Anyway, good guy. And he would set me up and stuff. But when Johnny came down, he said, now remember, Park, keep it in check. This is the Olympics. You're the informal guy right here. And we were glassed in, and I was up against the glass with my face like this. He grabs me by the back of the shirt, pulls me, and sits me down. And I went right back up to the glass until it was over. Then went back down. But that was fun, man. It was way fun, and there's a lot of great memories there. But I don't think so. Not terribly.
Not
Anyway.
terribly. So did you envision or foresee freestyle kind of being what it is today? Did you have that vision long ago, and seeing how it's kind of continued to evolve? I mean, sadly, ballet is no more. Aerials, it seems, is struggling a little bit at this time.
Yeah, it is.
Moguls is still going strong. Duels just made it into the Olympics, which is pretty
I saw that.
exciting. And then
I think
free
it is.
ride has kind of branched off and created a whole new world of freestyle skiing.
I think it was interesting when I talked to some of those athletes and hear some of the commentary. New school. I mean, old school of us is new school of today. It's just a little bit different. It's off access. It's the free in freestyle,
Mhm.
and that's what to me was a little bit discouraging because when we first got going, it was still there was the free was still there. All of a sudden, we started getting into man-made or what I say computerized moguls.
Mhm.
Jumps are there. The landing hills are chopped. Great. It's great because it saves the athletes a lot of injuries that we had over the years. But that little bit of free is kind of taken out of it. The spontaneity of
Mhm.
finding a bump and getting out something nobody even saw it was there. And so I miss some of that. What I in the new school stuff, the off axis stuff is way cool. But I grew up with some gymnastics background, and to
Mhm.
watch the guys doing aerials now, and especially in moguls when they're doing a double twisting back in a pencil tight position, that's still what I like to see. And but I think whatever they want to say, old school is new school. Whatever we brought to the table, whatever enthusiasm. But I will tell you that I've spoken with people that are traveling with the team and stuff, and all they want to talk about is the stories of old school.
Mhm.
Why did you guys do this and you guys did that? It seems like it's a competition now, and these are proven athletes that got to go after it 12 months out of the year.
Mhm.
So you don't see as much of that entertainment factor, if you will.
Right.
And probably a good thing. Like I said, we're lucky a lot of us are alive, but at the same token, it's am I surprised? Again, my passion helped me believe that something was going to happen. Even when I stepped back, I wasn't going to be the only guy that could be doing this thing. There was a bunch of people out there with that same enthusiasm. And what was cool is stuff, guys like Fuzz, that were 10
Mhm.
years behind me. And I got other guys that are 10 years behind him that had that same enthusiasm, that same passion. And so I don't think so. I think that I saw it going. What I continued to see was the spectator appeal,
Mhm.
and as you know, I mean, that's what it takes. You got to have spectator appeal if you want to get acceptance, whether it be in the Olympics or anything else. And if you don't have it, um, it's difficult. It's difficult to sell it. It's difficult to have guys get paid to do it and get sponsorships, which is all part of the deal if you want to make longevity out of sports. So it's got the spectator appeal, and New School has kept it going. And then, of course, snowboarding dropped into the loop, and
Mhm.
they're doing the same thing. And you watch those events in the Olympics, and there's, what are there, 10, 15,000 people on either side of the pipe
Mhm.
as these guys are coming down either their skis or their board. And it's, I don't think I'm surprised, but I don't know that I had this vision laying in bed one day saying this thing's going to go on forever. I hope aerials doesn't go away. Aerials is kind of the diving of the summer games. It's all about execution, and the stuff these guys are doing, quint twisting triples.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Some people can't even say it. let alone understand when I was doing a call on a full or something, and now it's full, you know, you gotta have a mouthful of stuff and marbles in your mouth to get through it. But I hope it keeps going, you know, because it really is. I don't think people understand. And you know, the problem is too is it's almost like diving. I would say that everybody looks so good, you know, and the synchronized diving this summer, you know, is the Japanese guys. It's just it's a mirror image. And what happens is when everybody's now doing, you know, 3 or 4 twisting triples, and they're doing them perfectly, that's what's hard, you know, to decipher. And it's hard for a spectator to appreciate that. Unfortunately, I think the same thing is happening in moguls. You know, it's bang, 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 bang. No mistakes in the turns. Whoever does the best air, whoever has the best speed, and let's keep pushing the air. And we've kind of lost that spontaneity in the turning part of it. I think in my personal opinion. So I don't think it's going to change. I think it's going to stay with what it is. But I think it still has spectator appeal, and I think that's the thing that's going to keep it fresh and keep it on board.
Yeah, no, to be able to, I think duels will add a whole other, you know, spectrum of that being in the Olympics and excitement and everything else, because, you know, it's such an exciting, you know, mano talk about speed, you know, they got the stopwatch. Yeah, you'll see their stopwatch in there, fastest to the bottom is going to win.
And you know, it's kind of like a car race. I mean, everybody watches car racing, but they're also just kind of quietly waiting for that big crash, right? Yeah. Oh my God, did you see that? Well, all of a sudden, you know, in duels, that's really a job of a coach to have them keep their head in check. Don't let this guy inch out in front of you, make you push buttons that you don't even have. And next thing you know, he's pushed it and he's out of the course. So I like that part of it because it makes everybody accelerate. But so I think what's going to happen is people are going to kind of be on the edge of their seats to see which one of these guys not so much wins, but which one maybe goes down. And you know, all over the place and that type of thing. But I don't know. We'll see how it rolls.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that continues to roll. I had one thing I wanted to ask was just if you had any pieces of advice or an approach for those kind of out there trying to make their way in whatever field, just to continue with that perseverance that you've had. When, you know, for you, it's just as simple as that it was your passion, right? And you really enjoyed it. And maybe looking back, it seems more perseverance than at the time. It was just something you really enjoyed. But do you have any advice for those people out there?
Well, I think I'm going to continue to use that word because it just fulfills so much of my love of what I did. But I know it does for other people too, whether it's in sports or anything. You got a passion. It's like you never go to work a day in your life. But once you lose that passion, and I think the thing that goes along with that for a competitive athlete or somebody in a sport that is really, when you look at the big numbers of the entire population, it's a third of a half of a percent people that do this, and then even a smaller percent of those that are successful at it. So I just say you got to say never. If you got that passion, just keep on driving, man, and you'll know when it's time to check out, and you'll also know when it's time to persevere. And I think if you'll allow your head to do that talking to you, I think that's an important factor to just say, you know what, I'm not going to quit, but I'm thinking that maybe it's time to check out, or you know what, I can do this. Never say never. Boom, I'm going to keep going with it. And because so much of this game, in our game, and in all athletics, I've said it earlier, it's from the neck up. There's an extremely talented group of people out there in every sport, but there's only a handful that can perform when they have to. And that's what you got to do in competitive athletics, right? So, yeah.
Wise
quit,
words.
Man. Never say never.
Wise words. Well, the other thing, I mean, you know, you've had over 3,000 athletes, at least in the research that I was able to find, 3,000 athletes that you were coached or that you coached and put through the ringer. I know Bogue was one of them. So my wife was actually coached by Bogue back at Stratton before she made her way to
I didn't know that. Wow.
So So I mean, several different people that you've influenced that coached me, and you know, I have this copy. My mom, this is Christmas when I was 9 years old. Yep. There's still a few of these copies floating around.
Yeah. I got to give a lot of credit.
I think that's Des on the cover, by the way. I'm pretty sure
sure
that's
is,
Des
pal.
on the cover.
It sure is. And there's a great photo of Fuzz in there in his yellow suit in the aerials. I don't know if you remember it, spin through it and check it out. But, you know, a lot of that credit goes to Hillary. She did most of the work. I was busy, and the company that came to us to try to put it together, it was a remote call or something like this to get some stuff. And we kind of worked through some of the step-by-step instruction. But Hillary English was a big part of that. And it was thrilled. But you know what's interesting is you see the author's name on there. It says Park S. Smalley.
Yep.
That's how in tune these group guys were with me. My name is Stephen Park Smalley, so it's S. Park Smalley. And that came out, and I saw it on the cover. I said, you know, and nobody knew except my family. They called me, when did you change to Park S. Smalley? And I said, I didn't, man. They never gave me a proof on that. So that was kind of funny. I thought. But yeah, that was interesting. And, you know, we did a instructional video. It was Hillary, John Witt, Lane Spina, and Fuzz and myself. We had a new exercise, or you know, warm up suit sponsor with the ski team.
Yeah,
I don't remember. You know what it was? Pikes Peak. Have you ever been down there in Colorado Springs?
Yep.
So we took a truck all the way to the top of Pikes Peak. They built us a platform stage up there. Mm-hmm. And I had an instructional thing that I was doing with all my athletes that I did, and they wanted to put it into an instructional format and you know, try to sell copies of it and stuff, which never went anywhere. But it was the most unbelievable thing. This backdrop was up there at Pikes Peak at the highest point on a little 12 by 12 wooden platform, the piece of carpet they laid down, and I went through my whole exercise routine with these 4 athletes and these funky looking jogging suits that we had. But you know, some of that stuff that went back there, we were all excited that we were going to go somewhere and do something, and it was, you know, kind of was exciting for the time, but never really made it. But you know, it's just cool to see it. It's come, like you said, full circle. And there's some, you know, it's the generations that I've seen that I've heard of and getting back into the sport, which I think is a lot about the passion of this particular sport. And I don't know if that's the way in all sports, because I haven't followed them, but in freestyle skiing, it certainly is. You know, like with the Bogues and John Witt and these people. And now you're and Bogue's son, and then other people, you know, son and daughter and stuff coming back around. It's pretty cool for sure.
Yeah, no, very, very cool. Well, Park, I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on and dropping some wisdom. And it's been great to learn a lot from the father of freestyle. And congratulations again on making the Hall of Fame this year. I
appreciate it. Thank you so much, Bobby.